I tried all kinds of crazy protocols that were really scary. Coffee enemas. I did the turpentine. Oh man, that's fucking dangerous. I'm surprised I didn't kill myself with some of these things, right? I thought I was a freak. I was like, you only hear about these stories on the internet, if that. And now and then nobody understood what I was going through. No doctors could understand. Like I was by myself. I was lost with all these symptoms, OCD looping thoughts. So I went down rabbit holes again. I was lucky to get the answer on one of these toxic Facebook groups where somebody said, oh, I'm able to eat 20 foods. And I was doing brain retraining. So it was like maybe my guides or my higher self or somebody up there was like, okay, let's throw him a bone. He's had enough suffering. He's willing to do the work, and we need him at rock bottom to actually make some changes. Because if I wasn't at rock bottom, I think I would have been like, I'll do it next year. So now it's like these methods of healing we can use with other things. They're like transferable skills with other things in life. They're amazing. It's like the secret law that we learn from the universe.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's conversation with Helmut, aka the Mindful Gardener on YouTube. Definitely worth checking him out. I love his energy and the way he talks about navigating chronic illness and disease. He knows from experience. He has had ulcerative colitis, diverticulitis, and eventually a perfect storm of 75 different symptoms that he had listed at one point. So Helmut hit rock bottom when doctors and conventional treatments weren't working for him and found a different path. He learned how to retrain his brain and calm his nervous system. He goes through a couple of the practices that he used every day for about 3 years, and I think he continues to do so, which completely changed his health. In our talk today, we talk about how our bodies get overloaded with stress, why many healing methods didn't quite work for us, and what actually helped us reset, our body's alarm system. And if you have ongoing pain or weird symptoms, chronic disease like an autoimmune disease, want to know more about this mind-body stuff from two people that are actively involved in it, I think you're going to really like this conversation. So we'll just jump right into it.
But anyway, yeah, my now compared to 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, it was a nightmare. 4.5 years ago, bedridden, 75 symptoms. Now I'm living the life, right? Living the life with no symptoms. But I've also realized that this is a lifestyle that you got to maintain because life keeps throwing me curveballs, and like it will, of course. And you got to, it becomes a lifestyle. And the thing is, symptoms, it all depends on my baseline. So if you're doing work and you're stressed out, the baseline moves up and it moves down, and it's supposed to, right? Like our allostatic loads go up and they go down. But the difference now is I'm able to move through it better than I was 5 or 10 years ago. Before, it would just start to add up and my baseline would keep climbing into a survival state. It would be stuck there, and then symptoms would manifest, and I'd be dealing with chronic symptoms. Now, I might get a symptom here and there pop up, but I move through it because, in a way, it's a good thing because it's kind of you're in communication with your alarm system. It's telling you, hey, wake up, you're dealing with too much of this. Maybe you should get back to taking this out, or maybe that friend of yours, you got to cut them out, or you've been working too much. Get back to having some fun. It's a good way for me to listen to it and go, yeah, you know what, you're right. And then you listen to it and you use the tools because we've been through it, and you're like a cork in water. You kind of adjust and you go back to standby, back to zero. Symptoms go away again, and it's not chronic. It's not ruling your life. You're not in misery or making exorcisms jealous. This is like you learn how to move through it and work with it, and it's nothing compared to what I was 5 years ago, right? But this is what can be expected, because people they sometimes think so you're never gonna have symptoms again, right? It's like, well, no. And you know what? There was a period about 4 years where I had nothing, right? I was like, because I did all the work for the 4 years of doing the work. You don't have the symptoms because it's fresh, but eventually life, you get back into life, you get back to work, relationships, situations happen where you might get a little stressed out here and there. Christmas, in-laws, right? And things will move up a bit, and it's normal, right? You're now you know how it works. You flow with it, and it's a totally different you see it totally differently than before.
So what is that like after doing the work for so many years and then maybe catching some symptoms pop up again when you didn't have any for like years at a time, and now where you're at, it sounds like you're able to just kind of float through things. When symptoms pop up for you now, how different is it than when like you were having symptoms before you put in all the work?
Uh, well, now there's confidence. Now there's no catastrophizing. Now it's like it's almost like an old friend, right? Because for me, like when I look back at my journey, at the time it was hell, but it was like almost like a comfort, like comfort with it, because I had to force myself to allow everything to be there, become friends with my symptoms, and you do become comfortable with the routine. And I like the routine. I like my visuals. I like doing my dancing. I like going walking for 3 hours a day because that was my 9 to 5. But then, you recover, you start doing other things in life, and I can't walk 3 hours a day. I can't do all the great things that I did. I do maybe 1 hour a day of walking, and then I do my visuals for another hour. I still do some of this stuff, but not all the stuff that I did in the beginning. And sometimes, when a symptom comes knocking at the door, it's like, I'm okay with this. It's not a big deal. I have confidence. I know I'm going to work through it. I'm very confident. I'm, at the almost like a master of the situation of your nervous system because you've been forced to sit in it for 3.5, 4 years, second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour. You're going to learn. You're going to fucking learn with confidence. And sometimes when you have these symptoms pop up, it sharpens your pencil. It keeps you sharp, right? And I'm grateful for them. So I think the difference would be like you see them in a different lens, not so much with fear, but more with confidence. And it's like, well, I know what to do. And I think that's how it was meant to be. It was meant to serve you, to send an alarm. You listen to it, you acknowledge it, and go, okay, well, I'm going to change some of this here and there, and I'm going to feel the emotions about this situation, how I feel about that person, and what happened. Maybe I got an argument with my mom. Maybe my dog died. Right? Some of these things you can't control. It's gonna drag you. You're gonna have symptoms. If your dog dies, you're gonna feel fucked up about it for 3 weeks, and something's gonna pop up, right? But you understand now what it's all about. It's normal. It's almost like like with my dog when it died. It was like almost like a respect thing. I'm like, I'm gonna have some nights where I'm just having bad dreams, or a little bit of insomnia. I can feel my nervous system is climbing up because I'm just ruminating and feeling so sad. I'm like, how am I gonna get over this? This is so much, and then the worry, the thoughts of, does this mean I'm gonna get sick again because of this big impactful thing? Like I did all this work for so long. I'm invincible now, and now I have this bomb that just dropped. Does this mean I'm going to get sick again? And I have to do all the work again for a year, right? You have these what if thoughts about that, but no, you move through it quicker, right? You figure it out. But yeah, it's interesting. Some of these things you have no choice. You got to go. Like if my parents are still alive, right? I'm gonna have to go through that some of that stuff, and that's heavy duty stuff. And you're gonna have fucking symptoms going through this stuff. It's gonna happen, and uh, and that's okay, right? It's not the end of the world, and you're gonna move through it. And I won't have the 10, 15, 75 symptoms. It might be one or two. And this is a good way to work with your nervous system. It's there to serve you. It's there to help you. You understand it now, how it works. And I think that's the big difference.
What started this whole thing? What were you diagnosed with? What was your chronic pain and stuff?
Years ago, I had ulcerative colitis back in 2000, maybe diverticulitis flares come and go. And they all lined up with situations in life like toxic relationships. Those were the main ones. Toxic relationships were the ones that were really driving the gut issues. And I managed them, and I was able to live life. But I think it was not till I became single from a 4 year relationship with a narcissist that was like the last drop in my bucket, right? Years, of course, years of bullshit that I went through, like drinking, smoking, partying, being on antibiotics 10 times, whatever affects you mentally or physically negatively, body keeps the score, it adds up, right? But that narcissist relationship was like the last massive drop, and I didn't know what was going on. I had like 25 5-ish symptoms at that time. Yeah, it was my first perfect storm. 5 symptoms at that time, and I managed it. And then I never really regulated. I just managed it. I was going down rabbit holes. So I had to get, repopulate my gut and try all these diets. So I did all the things, right? And then I had my second perfect storm, which was the 75 symptoms 4.5 years ago. And that was heavy duty. And I think that really forced me to look deeper and to go, okay, well, you've tried all the things with the first perfect storm. You did all the, motherfucker gene. You did all the mitochondria. You did the biome. You're thinking that you're special. I wanted to get a fecal transplant. I wanted to, I tried all kinds of crazy protocols that were really scary. I did the coffee enemas. What else is there? I did the turpentine. Oh man, that's fucking dangerous. Anybody ever want to do turpentine? Don't fucking do it because it's this oil. It's this special bottle that I bought. It's like $100, right? It's from the U.S. and it's pine needle oil, right? And there's this farm and they got these trees and it's like the best, right? It's another word for turpentine. When you say turpentine, people are like, "Oh, wait, are you fucking like paint thinner?" Like, yeah, there's a protocol that you take with sugar because I thought I had a candida problem. I did all the naturopath stuff, and I'm like, this is next level because there's a whole story behind it that 100 years ago, people were using this to clear out their candida and all kinds of health issues. So I was desperate, and I did some stupid things, and I'm surprised I didn't fucking kill myself with some of these things, right? So yeah, my second perfect storm was stuff that was just not regulated. It was still hanging around, and I had a gut issue, diverticulitis, and they weren't diagnosing it right. I should have known, but I didn't catch it either. I was like, oh, I've had this before. It usually goes. I'll take some antibiotics, and they weren't working. So I had to have emergency surgery. So I did the emergency surgery, which was traumatic. I was around with people dying in a room for a week, and my surgery was 5, 6 hours, so that was invasive. And it was just a traumatic whole situation. And I think that was also the last drop in the bucket, which got my nervous system to go haywire. So I did some after the surgery. I was healing for a couple of weeks, like normal, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's like the eye of the storm. I just got hit with all these symptoms. Food sensitivities came out of nowhere. It's like a light switch came on, and I was only able to eat rice, beef, and a couple of months later, apple. And before I was a foodie, I could eat everything I wanted. I enjoyed food. I was like, ate whatever, and all of a sudden, I can only eat two foods. I thought I was a freak. I was like, you only hear about these stories on the internet, if that. And now and then nobody understood what I was going through. No doctors could understand. Like I was by myself. I was lost with all these symptoms, OCD looping thoughts. So I went down rabbit holes again, right? But this time I went down rabbit holes for only maybe like 3 months, and I was lucky to get the answer on one of these toxic Facebook groups where somebody said, "Oh, I'm able to eat 20 foods." And I was doing brain retraining. And then I was lucky that the post was on there long enough that I could message her because they deleted her off the board. So it was like maybe my guides or my higher self or somebody up there was like, okay, let's throw him a bone. He's had enough suffering. He's willing to do the work, and we need him at rock bottom to actually make some changes. Because if I wasn't at rock bottom, I think it would have been like, I'll do it next year. Yeah, 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 right. I was a lazy type. I was just too sucked into my miserable routine. So I needed to fall hard. And I think it was all, now looking back, it was all perfectly orchestrated, right? And and I needed to fall hard and be in, like, have the dark night of the soul kind of a situation. So then I messaged her, and then she told me, "Oh, I did DNRS brain retraining." I'm like, "Oh yeah, so what is this all about? So what do you create neural pathways? What, you can just bypass an illness?" Like, I don't understand how this works. I didn't like, so what, people have Lyme and you create a neural pathway around the Lyme? How does that, right? It didn't make any sense to me, but I'm like, I'll try it because you said you have 20 foods. I'd be happy just to be 20% better and have 20 foods. Sure, I'll go on disability, but I want to be able to eat more than just two foods. So then I went down the whole rabbit hole of the mind body space with DNRS. I saw Dan Buglio videos, right? He wasn't very triggering, so which was important to me. So I started, they were my stepping stones. So I started doing the brain retraining. And it was great. For 8 months, I started to notice all these symptoms were going away, these physical symptoms, shifting. I was like, okay, this is what I need. This is okay. I got a path now. So before I didn't believe in it, but I did it anyway. And then I started to see major shifts. And then about the eighth to 10th month mark, I noticed the more I healed physically, the more my mental symptoms started to skyrocket. So I all of a sudden had post traumatic stress, more anxiety, intrusive thoughts, OCD looping thoughts. I had a room that I was pacing back and forth, trying to figure out my thoughts, trying to fix them, get rid of them, because they were torturing me. And because of that, I also had pelvic floor pain and muscle tension because you're constantly right trying to fight with your thoughts. I almost wanted to have my physical symptoms back so I can get rid of these mental alarms because it's just driving me insane. So I was stuck in limbo for a bit, and then I saw a couple of success stories on some of the forums, and one of the girls said that I was just, what I read, she was saying that she was dealing with a lot of anxiety, blah blah blah, and she did different methods. She had to jump ship, and I'm like, I'll message her, and it was triggering me because I didn't want to jump ship because I was holding on to this brain retraining, going, no, no, I don't want to. This is my path. If I jump ship, then I'm opening cans of worms again. Like, I was finally happy not to be that person anymore. To go down rabbit holes, like one more can of worms. I don't want to do this. So then I messaged her, and she's like, I had exactly what you had, and trust me, it's just a little shift. You're just gonna make a little shift. And I noticed that the brain retraining world was avoiding the big OCD elephant in the room. And I started to learn about ERP, the dare response, Claire Weeks, got into her, and I became my own guinea pig. And I kept some of these people near me so I could message them. So that was my evidence that I needed because my brain was not liking me trying this other stuff. So I'd have her on my WhatsApp and message her once in a while. I'm like, did you notice this? Did you feel like that wasn't, constantly bugging her? And she was willing to work with me because she saw that I was doing the work and she had patience. So I was like, thank goodness. So I tried the new methods. I became my own guinea pig. I made mistakes. I did all the wrong things so that I could have the contrast of what really worked. So, you fall on your face and it's almost necessary so that you can kind of understand what does work. And so I did that. I started to, instead of resisting my thoughts, because that's what I was doing in the beginning, I was distracting, avoiding, trying to fix, figure out, doing opposites, trying to make deals with my thoughts, trying to go right, try to go to the root of the thought and try to go, see, you're not this. Try to find the evidence of what was wrong, distracting, redirecting, saying stop, stop, stop to my thoughts. And that just, what I resisted persisted. It made my alarms go bigger and bigger and bigger. And then, you get a thought and it starts to poison the well. Like everything around that thought starts to, you look at your steering wheel, there's that thought. You look at your pillows, there's the thought. Everything, my whole world became my fears. And then this is where I had my chance to learn to allow these thoughts to be there, let them do their thing, even ask for more, let them run wild, symptoms, thoughts, feelings, all of it. And in the beginning, it was a 9 to 5 job again. I'm constantly processing thoughts 500 times a day, because your brain's like, oh, finally, he's allowing. So you have like a lineup of all these thoughts going around the block, right? And going, me next, I'm next. I'm like, okay, fuck you. Okay, you're next. All right, I'll allow it. So I would allow it, let it do its thing. Picture it as a cloud coming through my chest and my neck. Picture it passing through my back, and then I would engage. So the engage was really important. Get back to, shoveling the snow or doing my walk. But I would bring the thought or symptom or whatever thought with me and let it sit on my shoulder. So there was always an open door policy. But I had to also engage. So this was my 9 to 5, and plus doing visuals, and I was elevating, dancing for an hour a day to help bring my survival state down. So that was my work every day, second by second, and it was still hectic. And the more I did it, the more the brain was set, through the kitchen sink at me because it didn't like change because it's perceiving it as, well, change is dangerous. As we're taking a risk. I don't know. My job is to keep you alive. I don't care if you suffer. So I suffered, but I knew I had a path. I knew this was normal because I had people that I could talk to. They said, yeah, it's going to get worse, by the way. You're going to think you're going crazy in a couple months from now. I'm like, really? And then I started feeling that. I'm like, even though I felt like I was going crazy, it was okay because it was normal. I've already prepared myself, right? And I was prepared. I had my calendar. I had my post-it notes to keep me on the path. I was very, very strict. And I know a lot of people in the mind body space, they're like, don't be so hard on yourself. No, I needed to be very hard on myself, because if you're dealing with OCD looping thoughts and 75 symptoms, they're going to hijack you. The brain's going to hijack you, and it's going to win, and it has to win. That's its job. So I had to be prepared and keep walking through the storm, allowing everything, the chaos, right, the war zone, and minute by minute, second by second, you're making exorcisms jealous. You just keep going, and you sometimes you don't see any changes, and that's brought more doubt. Made me think I was special. Then I realized, just because nothing's changing, you got more symptoms now, does not mean that you're not recovering. And that's the hard part. And that's what I see people, that why they don't do it, why they quit. And that's what I try to tell people ahead of time. I try to prepare them and let them know that just because you have symptoms, physical, mental, whatever, skyrocket, whatever, it's not an indicator that you're not doing it. Keep going. It's going to happen to you at the first, because it took me 3.5 years to recover, 3 years and a little bit. And even at 2 year mark, it was insane. My setbacks were insane. 2.5 years, it was insane, but just a different insane than the first year. Just a different pile of shit with a different flavor, right? And right up to the third year, right, like before the 3rd year mark, it was very challenging. But then after the 3rd year mark, that's when I started getting relief, and there was peace. Brain was quiet. I was like, man, I can actually think. I can actually, have sit in a chair and have the brain not hijack me, which was massive. But then you get back into the swing of life, right? You get a job, you start being social again, going to concerts, and there's some more recalibrating there too, right? Getting out there and inching out, so symptoms come back a bit, right? And then, so I would say the fourth year is when I was fully thriving, not recovered, because recovery is, before you got sick. So that's when nothing was bugging me, no thoughts, all the symptoms were gone. And I was like, almost like my authentic self, but living differently. I wasn't like before, a miserable guy, smoking cigarettes, rotting in front of the TV, not really doing anything with my life. Being an angry, miserable guy working at a job that I hated. It's like, I do this. This is what I do. I'm out in nature all the time. I have a totally different mindset because I'm aware of my old behavior patterns. And sometimes that, your old self does pop up, but you're aware of it now, right? It's like, there comes that old habit, of how I used to act. Okay, I'm aware of it. I'm going to make some changes because I don't want to be that guy anymore. So it's like the old self slowly dies because you let it do its thing, but you kind of bring in a new program of who you really want to be, right? My music taste has changed even. 90% of the people I used to hang out with, I cut out. I don't hang out with, and I don't. It felt so good to cut people out. Like Facebook is like, oh, who can we delete today, right? And it's so refreshing. It's like, man, I'm this totally different person. I have this new life, this new chapter. I can't wait to see what happens next. And I have these tools that I learned in the trenches that I can use, not just for, it's not even about physical symptoms anymore. I can use these tools for like business, relationships, spiritual. Like if I don't know if you're into, I'm more of the spiritual, higher self, listening to your intuition and manifesting the life that you want, because I really believe that you can. And with these visuals, I've been using the methods that I did to recover from chronic symptoms. I use the same methods to create the life that I want when it comes to work and what I want to do. And the shit is real. It works, because let's say a situation happens to you that you don't prefer, like, right? For some reason, something falls in your lap that you don't like. I handle it the same way. I allow it to be there. I feel the feelings about it, and I just engage with what I prefer, what I want, and it always works in my favor. And then there's usually the lesson there that I learned, and I use it like a little golden nugget that you use it. That, compared to before, we catastrophize, we freak out, we get rid of it, and it just, it doesn't serve us. It makes us worse. So now it's like these methods of healing we can use with other things. They're like transferable skills with other things in life. They're amazing. It's like the secret law that we learn from the universe, right? And I see it with a lot of the interviews that I do. I think with you and a bunch of other people, we see like almost the same thing, that we notice that pattern.
Yeah, I have so many questions about kind of your journey with the different things you found, but I think it's so interesting. It seems like a very common thing for people that are diagnosed with a chronic illness, disease, chronic pain, experiencing this stuff, to go through similar uh, tiers in a similar order in terms of their like, trying to fix it once they like take, which I think is really beautiful because even though a lot of those things, once we're at the end of it, we find like, oh, that wasn't really the secret. It was still like, man, you got to love your old self for like trying it. And I think it's interesting that a lot of people's first, when they're in a chronic illness, chronic disease, it seems like a common thing. The first thing is like the more functional health diet stuff, which is has an impact, and that you need to like kind of start there. I feel like. And
Yeah.
then eventually people still have a lot of shit they're dealing with and it didn't fix everything. And then they go into, I think they go a little deeper down the functional, like the parasite stuff, the things you're talking about, microbiome reset, all the supplements, the MTFHR gene thing, and all that stuff. Then it seems like once you go through that and you're still dealing with stuff, it sucks because you feel like I know exactly where you felt. I've been in a similar thing where I literally, I mean, I have kept all the supplements from my functional health journey and the gene stuff and all that. I had so many of them. I spent hundreds of bucks. I'm in a different phase of my journey, so I haven't used them at all. But I couldn't even bring myself to throw them away. So the other week, I finally just dumped them down the trash because like I'm not going to use it. This isn't. I'm thankful for that part in the journey. It gave me enough feedback to keep going and to keep finding the next thing. But it wasn't the cure all. And then it's like the next stage is the mental stuff. Like I started understanding like, oh, I had a big issue that flared me up. I had a big fight with a business partner, blew up the whole business. Boom, my eye went. And I was like, okay, this was not a diet thing. This was not a like microbiome thing. It couldn't be. Here's this massive event that was thrown in my face and an immediate response.
And you needed that. You
And I
needed to see that the direct correlation so that you could go, yes, confidence, I know what it is. Good. I needed that evidence.
and I, the book I was reading, we were on a business trip, and the book I was reading on the flight was Sarno. It was the first Sarno book I had picked up. It was Mind Body. It was a Mind Body Connection.
Shouldn't mind.
Yeah,
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 Divided Mind or something like that. Yeah.
yeah.
And so I'm literally reading that while my eyes just flared out red, throbbing. I'm in pain. All the mental stuff. I mean, I've had two glaucoma surgeries, a cataract surgery. I mean, I've had a lot of shit with that eye, and it was quiet for a while, and I thought I got it with the diet, and then boom, and it's like all the looping thoughts, all that stuff, heavy stuff. And
Yeah.
then it went to the mind stuff, and so I haven't really gone deep into the brain retraining. For me, it was Sarno and then Dispenza and like the meditation stuff. And so that's kind
I
of
did
where
that Joe I did the Joe Dispenza meditations and I almost passed out in my bed doing the holding my breath for like it seemed like forever. He's like, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. I'm like, who's holding this shit? Fuck.
the breath is hard. I'm still working through that. But I think there's a lot of similarities, like with that meditation stuff and just the neural pathway brain retraining. And man, like the meditations have been really good for me. That's what I'm kind of working through right now. But like Dispenza has a really amazing kind of online course talking about basically like the neural pathway stuff and just it's pure just like science behind that. And man, that I go back and just watch that multiple times.
Well,
Just
he puts his money into, well, I don't know what money, but he gets money and he starts putting research into it because people need to see evidence,
yeah.
right? And I don't know, a lot of the stuff you don't see on Google, and then there's censorship, and then there's, the whole pharmaceutical thing. And so it's great to see somebody putting money into getting the evidence so that people can't call it woo woo all the time, right?
I'm glad you brought that up because woo woo was the thing, man. Like I was, you get to a point, and I know, man, me and you both felt this. Like you're desperate, and so you find these things, but you're still really critical, and your brain's going a million miles an hour. So it has to have enough. Like we're not just taking anything anybody throws at us. But the woo woo stuff was always, I was very resistant to it. And I felt the woo woo stuff kind of in that circle, like kind of around the Dispenza stuff maybe at first, of the meditation stuff and the just kind of like, oh, it's all in your head type stuff. And then, especially when things would turn to manifesting, I was like, oh, this is not what I'm into. I'm not trying to
Yeah,
manifest. I'm not trying to manifest a Ferrari. I just want to not feel horrible every day. I just want to not be in like pain and suffering.
yeah.
And
I think the manifesting is kind of like the bonus thing that you find out later on. But then when people bring that into early, it's like it ruins the whole. Like I don't want to go there.
well, that's the thing because you brought that up, and I think that's the one thing that's like, man, like it's got me fired up again. Because before it was just trying to close a gap. I am suffering. I want to not suffer anymore. But now there's this other
Right.
side to it where you nailed it when you said before. It's like it's the same techniques, it's the same power, the same stuff you learn when you're trying to just get over your chronic illness, and you can work through your mind and set these things is the same stuff you use to actually manifest and like live out dreams, you know? And it's like, wow, now there's a gain attached to it. Like I've been in deep enough that I'm not put off by that. I can actually see, and if you're manifesting your healing, once you're healed, what's the next thing? You want to manifest a career, you want to manifest a different lifestyle, like that. It's the same technique. So I almost wonder sometimes if the people that are struggling so much like we have almost this secret superpower where they're actually amazing manifestors. They just were manifesting the wrong shit. You know, like, and maybe, you know what I'm saying? Like they had all this power and they just accidentally, it was just kind of
Well,
unbridled, going everywhere.
in a way, the only reason why we're sick is because we programmed it in that way. We did it. It's not our fault. We didn't have a book to learn how to communicate with our nervous system. We didn't understand. It's not our fault, right? So we are the programmers. We programmed life events happen, not our fault. But the way we respond, the way we avoided suppressed emotions, the way we keep picking staying, with that narcissistic relationship, you stay in that survival state for long enough. Of course, it's gonna, it's perceiving danger. It's gonna, you programmed it into a survival state. It's gonna do its job. So now we're learning, okay, I'm here because of that. And now it's my job to do the work to get that survival state down. And then when you do the work, you learn some shit and you go, wow, I can keep going. The symptoms are out of the way. What else can I use this stuff for? And then this is where you can create your life. You literally are the guy that creates it.
So one of the things I thought was interesting in this path is, I mean, I've experienced my kind of chronic stuff for almost my whole life. I was diagnosed when I was in elementary school. I was diagnosed. I got hit in the eye with a basketball. Boom, set everything off. I started going crazy. Diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, uveitis, all the stuff. And then throughout life, it's funny because you think you're given the diagnosis and it's like you have this. But then things change and new symptoms, and then you go back to the doctor and they're like, oh, actually, you have this now. And it's like, well, if I had anything and that was what I had and it was glued to me somehow, it wouldn't just fluctuate and then turn into something else that other people have, like so that started making me a little bit just like curious and a little bit suspect of the kind of traditional medical system because I would also have like I remember early on when I was in middle school at this point and I started having gut stuff. And I didn't want to go to the rheumatologist because I knew, well, I'm just having gut stuff now. Maybe I won't have it forever, but if I go right now, they're going to diagnose me with Crohn's or something else, and then it's going to start this whole thing. And so I think that stuff started tripping me out. And I feel like some people now, if they're like watching this and they haven't really gone through their journey yet, they're just suffering and they're kind of surfing the web looking for answers. I would challenge them to see if that's true in their own life. I think a lot of us kind of go through multiple diagnoses in the traditional, at least Western medicine practices. You have something, but if we just have something at different times, and I don't think we really have any, it's manifestations of something that's just off in our core, in our spirit almost. You know what I mean? It's I view it now as like a guitar that's out of tune. It might be out of tune
Yes.
and the pitch is too high or the pitch is too low. Maybe it's out of tune and it's too low and you have Crohn's. Maybe it's out of tune and it's too high and you have uveitis. But it's the same. The problem is the tuning.
Yeah.
You can get
Yeah,
distracted.
you're in dis-ease. You're not in ease, right? It makes like here, I'll show you kind of my little spiel because this is how I understood it, right? I'm gonna hopefully it translates.
Love it.
So we got the survival state 0, 1000, right? This is the age. So through life, high school, bullies, fucking, you know, narcissist relationship that was here, fucking put me in a survival state. I was with her for, well, I had two relationships, like 10 years, right? And you're in a survival state, right? Normally what happens is, when you're at 0, you see a bear, you either kill it or you run. So let's say we killed it. Before we killed it, we're survival states up here. We kill it, we're back to 0. What, it took 20 minutes, right? We moved on. Our system's back to zero. There's no real allostatic loads adding up. It's like, okay, we've done the thing. But over time, when we're constantly dealing with bears in our lives and tigers, right? And that tiger you're with for 10 years, your brain creates this neural pathway. That's your new program. It hardwires it in, and there's the lock. It locks it in. That's your new baseline. When it's supposed to be down here, it's up here now constantly. You're in a survival state of fight or flight. And something's got to give. Body keeps the score. Symptoms are going to start to manifest. And not only that relationship, right? What else did we go through our lives? I got a little list here. I'll read it off quick. That's right here. I might as well go nuts with it. Right? Surgeries, medications, antibiotics, drinking, smoking. Some people took drugs. Well, the toxic relationships, the narcissists, toxic work environments, right? Where, especially a union environment where you have a lot of backstabbers, right? Politics with it, right? Life situations, events, blocked emotions, right? Even the symptoms themselves, they can become traumatizing. And we ruminate about them. Social media, politics, news, world issues, of course, like lately. It's been crazy, right? COVID, like so many people it affected them when the COVID happened. Supplements, trauma, abuse, parental situations that weren't maybe something that was perceived as dangerous. Special diets, a loved one passing, your dog, your grandma, your uncle, bad mental diet, just having a bad mental diet. What are you watching? Right? Are you watching drama shows? Are you constantly arguing with people on the internet, with Facebook Karens? And then there's the Facebook groups. The Facebook groups are really toxic. You might have had pneumonia, flu a bunch of times. You might have had to take certain medications, a bunch of whatever you think about vaccines. Either way, it puts loads on, right? Flu shots. I had to take them for 10 years every year, but that adds loads, good or bad. It still adds loads. And yeah, and the last one, fear of the symptoms when they pop up, right? It turns it into this big bonfire, and then that brings all those things accumulatively over time, right? And you keep that fire going. You're in the survival state, and then this is filled up to the brim, right? Something's got to give. Where it's like the storage in our phone is full, so and it's not working properly. It's like buffering. It's keeping you alive, but it's not focused on efficiently digesting that burrito because it's not important right now. That burrito is not important. So yeah, over time we have to think about, okay, we got to. This is what I had to do. I had to start to regulate my nervous system. I had to start to bring my baseline down from 1,000 over the 4 years, slowly doing the visuals, sitting in dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, slowly. It was work. I had to do work slowly, and then eventually my allostatic load started to empty. And then when a life event happened, your body's able to handle it. If when you get like a cold or a flu, your body processes it a lot quicker and easier. You might not even feel it as much compared to before. You're sick 5 times, over the flu season, and your cold takes like 6 weeks for it to leave. It's like because it's so overwhelmed, it's doing its best, it's keeping you alive, but it's overwhelming to the system. It's like this is. I have another example. It's like having a Honda Civic, right? A little hatchback, and you're pulling a 747, and you got 16 people in that car. and you're complaining that the tires keep popping and the engine's overheating. It's like, what's going on? I keep buying new tires and they keep popping. These are shitty tires. I think this Honda is a piece of shit, but it's not. The Hondas are great. They have great fuel mileage, but for some reason, I'm spending way too much money on gas. So what you have to do is you got to let go of that 747, only have two people in the car, and then the car will do what it's designed to do efficiently and work amazingly. You'll never have to buy tires again. It's not the tires, right? It's the loads that we pull. It's the survival state that we're in, right?
Mhm.
And that's how I saw it because I could see it directly with how this journey, going through this journey, I could see how the baseline was moving up and down, and how everything, there's a cause and effect. And for me, I have to understand things. I have to make it simple for me to do the work. So I had to get these kind of visuals of, okay, baseline, blah, 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 alarm system. Our alarms are ringing. Okay, we're going to turn off the alarms over time. And eventually we're going to calm that storm. And that when you calm the program of survival, the brain's going to stop sending you so many alarms because it's not trying to get your attention. And that understanding helped me through this journey. And I still use it for life events that happen.
And the alarms, the symptoms really popping off over these life
Yeah,
events and stuff. That's it being just already too close to the max, and then whatever that event is happens to be kind of the straw that broke the camel's back type of thing.
every time. Right. And then people blame that thing. They blame the lime, the EMF, the food, but it
Yep.
was the last thing, the last drop. So people blame that thing when it's like, what about all the other thousand drops of life situations that put you there? That X is right here, that fucking all this drinking that you did over here, all the
Yeah.
that all cumulatively adds up. But we blame that one thing, we get the label, and then we get wrapped up in a cycle.
Hmm. I love your analogy with the car and the 747 because I think when you go to the doctor, they don't see the 747. It's invisible to them. Only you can know. And so they're only going to look at the tires and be like, "Yeah, this is a tire problem. You got to like do this and this." But
That's exactly it.
so much responsibility. I mean, it has to be on us. There's no, and you can't, people love to just talk crap on the medical system and stuff. And there's a lot of fair points to that. But a lot of it's just like, it just wouldn't be possible. Even if you had the most compassionate, caring doctor that was the most open, like it's impossible for them to know what your allostatic load is, what's going on in your
Yeah.
days and your weeks, how you're spending your
Right.
time. Even if they hung out with you for a day, they could get a better idea, but they would have no idea what your kind of daily habitual stressors are that you've just kind of naturally fallen
Right.
into, and those build up. And you mentioned the media consumption stuff, which I think is a huge contributor now to this like skyrocket in autoimmune disease and chronic pain. Is like, you know,
Cell phones.
yeah, yeah, and I think mine. I struggle with that one a little bit because when I was a child, cell phones weren't like that big of a thing yet. There was no Instagram yet, all that stuff, and I still was having issues. Now I had life stressors that I know were
Right.
consuming.
Yeah.
But man, then by the time I was a teenager and phones are out and I'm looking at Reddit and I'm just seeing all of the world's news and crazy stuff and whatever, and it gives you that rush. I think that's the trippiest part about this whole thing is that the stuff that increases that allostatic load, that pressure in your system, is addicting. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like it feels good. And
Like
you're
a
just
drug.
looking for the next thing and you're looking for the
You go
next
through
thing.
withdrawal almost.
Yeah, and I just think like, man, that's a big one I think for people that, and I noticed this too. Like I noticed a big drop in my kind of pressure when I just stopped consuming that stuff. I mean, even to the point of like the news and TV. I might be overcorrecting at this point just because I've had enough suffering that I'm like, screw it. I don't even want to watch the basketball game. Like I don't want to watch the
Yeah.
football game, even though like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's nothing. That's a lot better than CNN or Fox News or whatever. But it's just interesting that a lot of people that I run into that have this definitely have the same kind of media consumption habits that I used to when I was suffering at my most, is watching all the stuff.
I still do it here and there. I gotta catch myself too. I'm like, dude, I'm on my phone and getting sucked in by some of this shit too much, and I gotta keep on top of that too.
What do you think of? Because right now you've had this awesome transition where you've gone through and kind of tried everything. And it seems like you really landed on, and I'm really generalizing here, but it seems like you really landed on the kind of root cause being your nervous system, and specifically then your brain, how you're perceiving these life events, how you're and how you could train this to not be, you know, so scared and in fear and in lack and stuff. And you mentioned visualizing, and I'm sure meditating and just kind of practicing quieting down. Is that kind of
Well,
what
with me, I couldn't do meditation.
okay.
It made things worse for me because that's when my brain would, because you're trying to quiet down. So that was resistance. And also the brain would use that to hijack me on purpose. It's like, oh, look, he's totally open. Let's get him. Right. So
Okay.
I had to put my brain to work, if anything, and kind of push it in this direction. So we got, and to pull that baseline down because the baseline's it's screaming up here. So I had to sit in dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins over time. I'm like literally putting work into bringing this down every day for 1 hour. And 1 hour a day, you don't see a needle move.
Mm,
But after a year, 2 years, 3 years, that's like plus elevating. I would dance in a room. I can't dance. I'm not a good dancer. I was listening to music from the East, and I was smiling like a crazy person. And I did that every day. Like this was like I never missed a day. So that's another hour a day times 365, right? How many hours is that times 3 years? That's a shitload of hours where the needle went from survival all the way down to zero over that time period. And because if you don't, if you're wishy washy, right, your brain will just resort to the original program. It's not enough because it has to. It's going to resort to the original program. So you got to keep leading in when you're walking up that mountain in flip flops, right, with the magma, you got to lead in with that program, and it's you're dealing with resistance. You're going through the storms and the fires, but you got to keep going no matter what. And then eventually, you got the new program in of ease, and the old program of dis-ease is finally dissolved, right? But that's where the work. That was my day to day routine, same shit, and it's not woo woo. That's the thing. It's there's science to it. I don't know all the science, just enough science for me to understand it to do it. Right?
yeah. What walk me through that a little bit more. So the dancing, you call
Hmm.
it elevating.
Yeah.
So you're just having to fake it, and you do a full hour, like what you put a
Yeah.
what was that like? You put a timer on, and you
Couldn't.
literally just kind of force yourself to smile and dance.
Yeah. I didn't. I couldn't listen to metal music anymore because that's what I grew up with, and or even Nirvana. I had to listen to stuff that was like all of a sudden I started listening to reggae constantly because it was easy going. It wasn't triggering. It wasn't giving me adrenaline. Right? Because a little bit of adrenaline, I was fucked. I couldn't do that. So, I wasn't a good, like, I wasn't full, I wasn't doing like triple axles or anything. I was just like doing this in a room, right? I had my tablet there. I put like a playlist or whatever, listened to it, and just kind of air drum. Did a lot of air drumming. I can do that. And then in the beginning, it sucked. I didn't like it. I felt nauseous. I felt like I was gonna cry, or I was ruminating about this symptom here or whatever. But I did it anyway, and eventually, I started to authentically enjoy the dancing. Where I was like, oh, I can't wait. I got to do my elevating. Okay, let's go. So I'd be like, yeah, fucking right. Same thing with my visuals. In the beginning, when I did my visuals were horrible. I wasn't good at them. The whole like 80% of that hour was a waste of time, and only 10, maybe 10 minutes of it, I was actually sitting in dose. But that's in the beginning you're in a state of fight or flight. Your gate's a little closed. The brain doesn't want you to be sitting in dose and thinking about pussy cats and rainbows. It wants you to be paying attention to the tiger that it's trying to get your attention from. So it's going to cock block you constantly. You're going to hate it. It's going to remind you of when I did my visual. It's going to remind you to be able to do that I can't do now, or it's going to remind me of what you'll never do in the future. So don't look into the future. But it's also a form of exposure. So these negative thoughts are going to come. So you're allowing them while you're doing the visuals, and you start working through them. You're not distracting from them. And then eventually that brings the baseline down also, and you're turning off these thoughts. So the visuals did a lot of things at the same time. They also, started to work my spiritual muscle where I was getting downloads eventually. That comes a little later. That wasn't the important thing right away. That was like a nice little bonus where you got clarity, synchronicities, stuff like that. So the visuals, I would say is one of the biggest things for me that I did that I needed, because you have a meeting with yourself. You're like, I would sit in my car, park it somewhere where there's nobody people around, like at a trail, have like a tea or water, and I'd have a list of what visuals I'm going to do, so you're not wasting time trying to think of what I'm going to think about. So I pick one. I did 2 past memories and 2 future ones. Then eventually I got bored with the past memories, and I would just do all future. So, for example, say you do a visual about fishing with your dad when you were 7. Well, what you do is you bring it up, you talk about all the details, what kind of day it was, what kind of sandwiches you ate, what did the sandwich taste like, what clothes were you wearing, did you catch a fish, like all the little details, right? So it feels like you're really there, and that's how you sit in the dose, and then that brings the baseline down over time, and that's what I did, and I started to eventually enjoy my visuals, where I loved them, and I did them because I would get these golden nuggets of clarity. And any question that you have, this is where the woo-woo stuff comes in, the spiritual stuff. You get the answers, right? And you look forward to it. You have a meeting with yourself. You start to go, oh yeah, I had a situation with my wife, and it's just been bugging me. Well, you have a meeting with yourself where you can feel the feelings, right? And then also have an action plan, because we're not going to be on this path perfectly. We're going to come off the path here and there. But when you have a meeting with yourself every day, you're kind of like, oh, I notice I'm slacking here. This is where I can pull this in more. This situation here, and my visuals are, the quality should go up a little bit. So you're the director. You're making sure you're on the path. You're strict about it. Then you do your visuals. Then you're done with your visuals. You stick to your routine, right? That's what I did. So visuals was really really important. And well, I have the here. I'll list you some of the things that I was doing. I was doing the visuals. I was making sure that allow and engage was like my full time practice. I was lifting my mood every day for an hour. I was being aware of old behavior patterns, because that's really huge. Not talking about symptoms with people, and not talking about symptoms with yourself. Or if you have a shoulder pain, not going, oh my God, this is so much, I'm never gonna, right? Because you're just speaking the danger while you're in the danger. We're supposed to speak the safety while we're in the danger. And I kept reaffirming the old program. Exposure in stages. So I didn't have to worry about exposure in the beginning, because everything around me was exposure. Everything I was doing was already, I had lots on my plate to work with. So I didn't have to do any hunting or digging or anything of that. The brain sent me my chaos. So I was plenty of exposure. Preparation was really important. So having my post-it notes, my calendar, having my, whatever I needed to make sure that I was prepared, because you're going to have delays. It's going to throw you off the path, and you got to have mechanisms set in place to make sure that you stay on the path, right? Putting all the research on the shelf that I did throughout the years, that was really, it's going to slap you in the face, especially when you go through this journey. This thing that you researched 8 years ago that counters your path. It's going to say, no, remember that thing, that one thing that you said? It's totally, the doubt comes in. So I had to be willing to put it on the shelf for 2 years. I said, okay, I'll put you on the shelf for 2 years. I'm not saying that we're getting ready yet. I'm just saying that maybe in 2 years we can always come back to you, right? So the brain doesn't go, hey, no, right? So you work with the brain, go, I'm just putting it aside, right? But we're gonna do this brain thing. We're gonna give our body and our brain a chance to do its thing. I'm keep cock blocking it. I keep trying to micromanage my body. So now I'm gonna finally support it by updating the software so that it can do its thing. So yeah, committing 1000% was another thing. And then sticking to a routine every day. When you have the hard days, are you going to go home and sit in a safe room or lay in bed and go, no, no, today's too hard? No, 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 no. This is why I had the routine, because the hard days are prime time to stick to the routine, no matter what, because that's the golden time when you're sending the message of safety. That's when you have, you make the biggest changes when you have the hard days. Because if you give yourself too much, soothing days where you're like, oh, I'm just going to take it easy today, then all of a sudden it turns into a month of that, and then 2 months and the whole year, and you're back to the old program. So the routine was really important. Getting out in nature, getting out in movement in nature, being outside, and sticking to I did my visuals in the morning. Then I did my 2 hour, 3 hour walks. Then I would go shopping, do whatever I needed for that day. That's why I had my post-it notes. Then I would do my dancing. And then all these things added up to my day. That was my day, right? I was constantly engaging and doing work, right? And that's what I needed. And that was the pillars for me for recovery. And if you look at all those things, there's nothing dangerous about it. There's no supplements. There's no drugs. There's no It's just you changing your lifestyle and working with your mind. And they're all good things that people should learn to do anyway.
Yeah. And so now you take all that stuff that you've learned and you help other people and coach in this. And that was an interesting thing in my journey is like it took a long time for me to even discover that there were people out there that do coaching in this space. And like you mentioned Dan Buglio, and my first person I came across was Dr. Tova, and she helped me a lot.
Yep.
And there's just so much resistance around that too. You know what I mean? Because you're just like, well, who are these people? They're not wearing white coats. They didn't go to
Right.
Harvard Medical School or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother I think obstacle people have to be willing to go into.
Well, you know what?
What was
That's
that
an
like?
interesting thing that you're bringing up because, like anything else in life, you got to question who you're going to take advice from. Like a
Mhm.
plumber, if you're going to get a heart surgery, you're not going to go get a plumber to do it, right? So for me, it was important to talk to people that well, what did they deal with? Did they deal with one symptom? Did they just have back pain, or did they have what do they have? 75 symptoms? Okay, well, if I'm going to talk about food sensitivities, if I want to find information out, I'm going to talk to somebody who's been through it, somebody who's been through the OCD looping thoughts, who's sitting in the trenches, who suffered, right? I need to talk to that person because they're going to give me the evidence that I need for my brain to go, okay, we can do this, right? And not just somebody who might have a big platform that's just generalizing and taking an educated guess. I need to have that person that's been through it, and I think that was really important also for me.
And then what's that like? What was your first kind of exposure to coaching and this stuff? Yeah, what was that
I
like for
didn't
you?
like it. Oh yeah, when I got out of when I recovered, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be a coach. It's gonna be this is my purpose. This is my life thing, right? And I wasn't prepared. I didn't have a program set. I didn't have like right. So people were messaging me. I had like 20 messages a day, and for each person, I'd be spending 3 hours with them trying to explain what to do, right? So I'd be like sending voice messages, and I'm trying to get through all these people. It was draining, and people wouldn't do the work, and it was frustrating, and I was still triggering in some areas. When they talk about their symptoms, it was still trigger me a little bit. It was good in a way because it was another opportunity for exposure. Great. But I was exhausted. I hated it. I didn't like working with people. I was like, this sucks. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I'm going to start a cleaning business. I'm going to kick it far away from the mind body shit. I've earned my recovery. I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to be a little bit selfish. I'm going to start a cleaning business and just clean. Mindless cleaning, right? Do some carpet cleaning. Love it. So I did that. It was doing good for a while. And then for some reason, the mind body thing started to call me back. I was like, and I started getting curious about it. I'm like, I don't know. I kind of want to do that, but I don't know. I'm just not wasn't prepared. Maybe that's what it was. It was the wrong time. So then I did an interview with Dan Buglio, did a couple of videos, and I started getting all these subscribers and all this interest. And I was like, fuck, I gotta keep on top of this stuff. And I started doing videos, and I really enjoyed it. Like, oh, I'm enjoying this stuff now. And I started doing group coaching, and I started enjoying that. And I was also prepared. I had a program. I was able to go just watch this, watch the course, and I can just be like, no problem, right? So the workload wasn't as bad. I was organized, and I actually enjoyed it. I like working with groups, and I think that was a big deal. I think it's the right time and being organized with working with people. Because if you're overwhelmed, just coming out of recovery, forget it. It's like more stress.
Yeah, it sounded like you almost needed the practice to live your own life on the other side of it for a minute before you dove back into it from the other angle. Well,
Exactly.
when you found your first kind of coaches in this and you were talking to them and getting advice and stuff, what was that like for you? Because I think for a lot of us, like we're super critical, overthinkers. Is this person just scamming me? Is this person, you know what I mean? Like there's all these like just fear, doubt, guilt, shame, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. It's really hard to just let that go and try to get some help from another person. You know what I mean? Like how was that
I
like for you?
realized I realized that some of the coaches that I used weren't really good. They didn't really know what they were brain retraining coaches too, right? Even TMS, some of them too. I was like, um, they didn't really seem to understand it. Like there was this one coach that I had. I did a package deal. I paid like $1,500, and her advice was just horrible. But I'm happy I worked with her because she had the same symptoms as me. She fully recovered. So she was the evidence that I needed to be around. So I could email her anytime I wanted, right? This is where I was doing the wrong method still. And she would give me the answers. So I was pretty much paying her a lot of money to tell me, yeah, I recovered from that. Yeah, I recovered from this, to keep me on the path. Then I was lucky to finally find the answers with somebody for free, of course, that changed my life. But most of these coaches were not very impactful for me. They were not very good. And I was paying money for them. And it was fine. It gave me the idea of like, I don't even, these people are either not really recovered or they just don't know how the hell they got there. Really? Right? And I would ask them questions, they wouldn't know the answers to them. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to work with them anymore. And even the group coaching, some of the group coaching with these groups, they were just teaching bad information over and over again, like it was a cult. And then learning that for me was important because when I started to do coaching, when I started to do the group coaching, I could go, no, thank goodness I'm not, my stuff is totally different. I need to learn all the wrong things so that I can feel confident and comfortable and happy that I'm teaching what really resonates and what makes sense. And I can feel, happy that no, this, blah, blah, blah. It's totally different. So I needed to, experience the bullshit.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that because I'm also like kind of in this entrepreneurial space, and I'm open to coaching in that world and this world, and a lot of times I see overlap, and the one thing I see from people is that have made success and like had coaches themselves, they've always had multiple coaches, and they've always had
Yeah,
coaches that you know weren't so great until they found one that was. But in a weird way, you have to start somewhere, and you have to have. And so I think that's like something I'd put out there if somebody's watching this and they're like right at the cusp of like their next stage. You kind of have to just get in there and try it. Like you're saying, like even the $1,500 just to be around somebody that has healed, even if they're not giving you the right advice, that's who knows how much that's worth actually, because it at least opens your brain to seeing and being and speaking and talking to somebody around that's in the space that's not doom and gloom, that's actually living the some way that you want to, and you can see evidence. It's evidence for your brain, and that's pretty
right.
powerful. I
Yeah,
think.
the person I was working with, she was the poster girl for DNRS. So of course they had a lot of views, a lot of right. So you like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then one of the things that she told me, so some of her, because I was going through this period of fearing the fear, where I was having anxiety and I was scared of having the anxiety, so it gave me anxiety. Right? I'd go through a drive-through and all of a sudden I feel anxiety coming. I'm like, no, 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 no. And then I was like, fucked. And then I told her this. I'm like, every day around 11 o'clock a.m., I got an anxiety attack and it lasts throughout the whole day. And I hate having it. Can you help me? What do you? She's like, yeah, you're fearing the fear. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And she's like, okay, well, do you have this at 11 o'clock at night? I'm like, no. She's like, okay, so what I want you to do, I want you to pretend when at 11 o'clock a.m. hits that it's 11 p.m. I'm like, okay, fuck. So 11 p.m. rolls around, I could start getting anxiety attacks at 11 p.m. also.
Oh no.
What a shit show. I was like, she doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. Brutal.
How do you navigate that? Because I hate that that happened for you, but it's kind of funny. It's crazy. How do you navigate it now that you're helping people? So many people just have different symptoms. They're at different stages. They are at different levels of, discipline, to be frank, on like doing the work. Maybe they haven't really hit rock bottom yet. They're
Right. And with those people, I sometimes I don't even work with them. I'm like, you're not ready yet. You gotta hit that rock bottom. You need that fear to drive you, right?
Mhm.
Because then it's just a waste of time. Because then you're just gonna be wishy washy, and it's just wasting my time. It's a certain type of person that I'd like to work with because it benefits them. It makes me look good also because I want to have a high success rate, right? So all these things, right? You don't want to have wishy washy people.
How do
That
you
drains you also, right? It drains you, and then you don't offer the high amount of quality coaching that you would if you're, dealing with people that are resonating with you.
Yeah, totally. How do you, what's kind of your criteria? What do you look for people to determine whether or not they're ready to really do the work?
I tell them, well, watch my videos, and you can kind of tell when they speak to you how much information they've absorbed. That tells me, oh, they're really getting into this. They're serious. And then they'll tell me a little about their symptoms and how horrible things are. And then you have the back and forth a little bit. You can kind of tell, like, yep, they're implementing, they're serious, they're not wishy-washy. You ask them questions. So did you do this or that? Well, I did like 10 minutes on Tuesday last week, and I'm thinking, I can't do it. It's really hard. And then I'm like, yep, not going to work with them. Right? Or they're like, yeah, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I noticed this came up. And this is like, yeah, that's good. They're asking the right questions. And I'm like, all right, you know what? Well, how about you get on my program? I'll send them my program. And then I'm like, it's also involves group coaching. And then you work with them that way, because also you have to be aware and be careful with who you add into your group, because they can affect everybody else. Right?
How do you
So,
manage that? Because you brought up multiple times, I think a lot of people find this. If you try to find Facebook groups or groups for insert disease, right? I was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis. That was my last biggest kind of thing. There's ankylosing spondylitis groups, there's ulcerative colitis groups, there's whatever. And they are all uh, pretty negative, it seems like. You know what I mean? It's just people wanting to kind of
it's
suffer
so
them,
bad. It's
which
so bad.
I have a lot of empathy towards. I feel awful because it comes from just them being in a dark place, which I myself have been. But that gets kind of, how do you keep that from happening when you're building your own groups?
Well, it's one of the things I talk about. I'm like, be aware of your old behavior patterns. You got to create a little bit of a bubble. And I tell everybody, are you going down rabbit holes? Are you going in Facebook groups? So I repeat this a couple times a month. So people, I'm like, I'm like, my day was horrible. My week was horrible. Blah 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 blah. I'm like, okay, let's go down a list of things that could be. Uh, Sometimes it's just, well, 99% of the time it's just because you're doing the journey. So don't overthink it. Don't analyze it. And then did something stressful happen this week? Well, yeah, I had an argument with my husband, and we're losing this, blah blah blah. My dog died, but like, well, there's that. I'm like, did you Google? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, there you go. Are you in any Facebook groups? Like, yeah. I'm like, well, you're supposed to get off those Facebook, right? There's always something you can always find it, yeah, being aware of old behavior patterns and changing them is huge. And these Facebook groups are so bad. I know, because I went through it, but also you'll have a miserable Karen on these Facebook groups, and they're taking it upon themselves, because some of these groups have 40,000 people in them, right? And they're deciding the future of these people's lives, right? Because they're like, no, we don't want to have any. We don't want you giving any hope. We don't want. No, I don't. Why? Because I didn't recover. That's not okay. Well, I don't want. Yeah, right. Like, those people are going to recover. No, like, they feel they put their misery upon everybody's in the group, and they block people, and they act like Karens, and then people are just absorbed by this brainwashing constantly, and it becomes their reality, and that's horrible. I can't believe that this is allowed. It makes me so angry.
I thought it was
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, you had mentioned before that first kind of hint at the brain retraining stuff was in one of those Facebook groups, and you said that they deleted her post and maybe even kicked her out of the group, if I heard you right. Like, it's interesting. I've had somebody reach out to me after seeing one of my videos and say that she had a similar experience where she was like, finding similar things to me, and she's like, I tried posting it in this group and it just got like a really negative response. That's so interesting.
Hmm. They don't like it. They get miserable. They want to stick to their nonsense, and if you talk about anything, they just hit you with all the biome stuff. Well, no, it's because you need to have, it's these are physical things. These are, you had an infection. It's your environment. It's
Yeah.
it's like, and then when you tell them, well, it's not none of those things. Then they get into the sciencey stuff of it, and it's like, it feels like the more sciencey you get, and the more you have a guy in a white lab coat, the more it's believable. So I would get further in these groups if I were to tell them, hey, I got this protocol. You got to take certain supplements on a special Tuesday and Thursdays on an off month, and also on a leap year, and you'll only recover 60%. Only 60. That's the best we can do. People will be like, "Oh my god, take my money." Right? Because that's the brain latches onto that. They'll believe it. But if you go, "Hey, you can fully recover. All symptoms gone." You don't have to take any supplements, right? Nothing dangerous. People are like, yeah, no, that's poor shit. Get him off this. Get him off. Oh my god, right? He's too triggering. Get him off. He's nonsense. Like he's woo woo. He's a hippie. He's a right. They don't want to get that. They don't want to hear the key or the truth. They want to hear, give me something difficult. And I don't want to fully like the complicated shit because the brain latches onto that.
Yeah, I think I think it comes down to this the secret that I feel like this thing all boils down to is that it's inside of ourselves. Like we are fully responsible. And I think that's the really hard pill to swallow because if you believe that if I have everything in me to heal, completely heal, then it was something, if it was something inside of me, if something inside of me is going to make me heal, then does that mean that it's something inside of me that caused all this to begin with? And that's kind of a really hard thing to confront because you want it to be external. Like, no, this is
Yeah.
not, this is so painful. This can't be my fault. You know what I mean? Like, I can't, it's not me, it's the outside. And then all these things are trying to fix it from the outside, the food you're consuming, the you know what I mean, the
Mold,
supplements,
like
yeah,
the
whatever,
yeah, you name it.
the coffee enemas, all the stuff, it's like, and that's more attractive because if that can heal it, then it wasn't ever you. It was something outside that was you can maintain victim, like, and I think that's the hardest thing. And when people see other people making
And it's more
progress,
believable. I get it.
yeah,
Like I don't want people to tell me that I can my because it's everything's cliche, right? It's like your mind is your mind can heal your body. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I heard that before. Right? It's all in your mind. It's all you get sensitized to the point where you dismiss the truth
yeah.
because it's just not enough, not much of an impact. It's not believable, but you've been desensitized by it. It's that's how I felt.
It's offensive, when you're in the
Yeah,
thick of it and someone's like, your mind has the power. You're offended by that. You're like, well, I don't. Do you think I want to be feeling this? Do you think I want to be
yeah,
suffering like
yeah.
this? It can't be that easy, And it might be
It's real
simple.
stuff.
Yeah, it's
It's real
real.
stuff. Like my mom, she'd be like, Helmut, you are scared of the food. I'm like, I'm not scared of the food. Then why don't you eat it? Because you're afraid you're going to have something wrong. I'm like, because something is wrong. She's like, no, there is nothing. It's in your head. I'm like, listen, if I eat a little piece of this tomato, I'm on the shitter for 3 weeks with bloody fucking diarrhea. She's like, no, it's because you are afraid. I'm like, okay, fine. I eat the fucking tomato, and I'd show her. I'm like, see? And she's like, right, kind of like, that's weird. And she goes, that is weird. Yeah, no shit. It's real. It's really happening. I'm not deciding that I'm all of a sudden scared of tomatoes, right? Because I'm just scared of tomatoes. I'm not scared. I don't give a shit about tomatoes. But this happens. My body decides to do this, right? And I don't like those symptoms. So yeah, I'm scared of the symptoms because this is really happening. This is a real thing.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's kind of a trippy thing, like, because in a way, your mom is right. You know what I mean? And like, you know what I mean? Isn't that the weird kind of like dynamic of all this? In a way, that fear and
It's in
everything
all in your head. It
that
is.
in a way that was manifesting, your symptoms that came from that, but
Yeah.
when the symptom comes and it's real, you kind of forget about that allostatic load thing, you know what I mean? And the fear attached to the food and there really is, I think, like you said with the cold, if you have a cold and it takes you 3 weeks to get over it, well, that's a really real biological thing happening. That's because your body has been in fight or flight, and it's almost been basically feeling like it's been fighting a flu for 3 months before the cold, and it doesn't have that much energy left. It's like it's running on fumes. So it's just such a trippy thing because the biology and the symptoms coming from stuff is material, but it is still at its core mental. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like it's such a
Figure
trippy.
this part out, get this all, you know, working right and organized, and then the body just follows suit. That's what I
Yeah.
realized.
That's so interesting, man. This is a perfect way to end it. If we were to just say kind of one more thing to somebody watching this, that's just kind of new, and they're just now getting the YouTube algorithm sending them things that are in this sphere. Maybe it's Sarno, Dispenza Brain Training, Mindful Gardener channel, this kind of stuff, my videos. What's your recommendation? When people come to you and they're like, "Hey, where do I start?" What do you say to people?
Well, I say do the educate yourself with a little bit of everything, so you got like a well-rounded, thing. But there is work to be done. I know TMS world doesn't like the word work. It's a dirty word. They just want you to go live life. But I think there is work to be done, and to stick to it no matter what. Just because you have symptoms popping up does not mean you're not on the path to recovery. That was a hard one for me to understand, because it's like you're doing all the work here and this is where it pays off here. You're paving the road over here. But right now it's hell, 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 and then it pays off over here. So just understand that symptoms are going to come up, and they need to, because there are opportunities for you to update the alarm system. So you need them to be there. It's going to be a shit show. Have patience, a lot of patience. Pick a couple of things that you're going to stick to. Don't be going around everywhere having 10 coaches and doing 18 programs.
Hmm.
Do some research, but don't make it where you don't do the work and you're just the person that knows a little bit about everything, and just stay stuck and then complains about how nothing works. That's another thing. Be accountable and do the work, not just spend all the time researching and being in all the forums.
I love that. Okay, I probably should end it there, but one more thing came up, and I just have to ask you because that was so good. I think seeing kind of, I'll call them testimonies, seeing people that actually like have done it was really impactful for me to start. And you had mentioned something similar, even that coach that you paid for, it was the exposure to the other side. One of the biggest kind of testimonies I've seen, it actually came fairly recently, even though I feel like I've started my journey, a couple of years ago. I had a buddy. He had ulcerative colitis, the whole thing, dealt with alcoholism. I mean, just like really went, had a really tough go and hit rock bottom. And I met him after, like, really a good while after he had already started his recovery, and he was just a different person. And so it's interesting talking to his wife and other friends and stuff that had knew him before I did, and all this stuff. And we got to talking because, a lot of that stuff, all of our symptoms are similar. Even if I have ankylosing spondylitis and somebody has ulcerative colitis, we kind of, you can feel that. And so we would talk, and the gut thing is so common. And I'm still trying, just for my allostatic load, I still try to be really simple with my diet right now, even though I know there's fear and stuff. It's just an easy thing for me to go to.
Yeah, yeah. Do what you got to do. Yeah.
But one of my things is I can't wait. I can't wait to, just go crazy and be able to eat whatever I want to eat without the fear, without the symptoms, without all that stuff. And I saw my friend, we went to a rodeo together, and we went to this little greasy cheeseburger shack, and I watched my friend just get like a double cheeseburger and just have the best time eating that. Now I didn't do it because I wasn't ready yet. You know what I mean? I would still feel symptoms, whatever. I'm just like, let me just keep the load off, enjoy. But watching him eat that cheeseburger and just have a good time and not end up in the hospital or having symptoms flare and all this stuff, and he just was able to eat it and enjoy it, was like one of the biggest testimonies to me of like the other side of this. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, like, have you had a similar moment? Was there something or some story that stuck out to you where you're like, oh my God, I've been where that person's been, but now I'm watching them do something I never thought was possible?
I was surrounded by it everywhere because I was in the brain retraining program. So you're in the forums, you're seeing all the success story section. I watched all the success story videos. I have friends with some of these people. So it was really important for me to surround myself with a lot of that, because that really drove my trust in the work. Instead of, and I refused to go and watch anything negative. Like I was creating a bubble, right? In the beginning, I needed to have that bubble just to not get poisoned with this stuff that would doubt. So I had to surround my with I had to I had to brainwash myself with the idea that you can heal. So I literally did the opposite way of not brainwashing yourself to that you're sick, but brainwashing yourself that you can heal with people that you surround yourself with, the stories. Sometimes I'd keep a couple of stories, screen recordings of certain interviews in my phone, and I'd watch them sometimes 16 times in one day just to get my brain over that bridge, because the doubt would be pounding at me. So I'd be like, okay, let's get where are my safe videos? Got to watch them. Okay, so a little bit of okay, confidence. All right, and then you also, with history, if you have like a symptom logbook, You write down the details of what you went, how long it took, you put it away, and then let's say that symptoms comes back like in 6 months from now, pick up that book and go, oh fuck, oh, I have this. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, it passed. Cool. So this time you have more confidence and you go through the delay a lot quicker. Instead of like 2 weeks of freaking out, now it's 3 days. And then you start to get to know your symptoms. Right. So that was all important, keeping the people around me to build that evidence to keep me crossing that invisible bridge. Because everything around you is lying to you. YouTube, if you Google one of the 75 symptoms that I have on YouTube on Google, it'll say, "Well, no, you can't heal that. You got to maintain, you got to manage. Like, come on, you can't, right?" So you're constantly being surrounded by lies and different realities. So that makes it really difficult. So it's good to surround yourself with things that show you the opposite of that.
Yeah, you're being brainwashed anyway. You might as well consciously brainwash yourself in a better direction.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. That's what happens. And it gets you there. And that brainwashing doesn't seem so crazy. It seems like your new normal. It's like, this is normal. Like with somebody else, it's like such a distant, weird thought, abstract thought, where it should be normalized. But we're so distant from these realities. It's crazy.
Yeah. And people hear brainwashing and they immediately assume, well, my reality is real. Brainwashing would be living in a pretend world. And I think once you go deep enough down the journey, you realize that the real world you've built has been on the back of the unintentional brainwashing, that you've just accumulated over your life. I thought it was interesting you mentioned music too. I mean, it's fun picturing you. It seems like you were into metal. Like you kind of have that aesthetic too. You look cool. You
Yep.
got cool tattoos,
Yeah.
and for you to almost have to make almost like an identity shift of like then being smiley, happy, listening to like reggae music and like
Yeah.
who knows, Motown, whatever, like positive
Right.
stuff. That's interesting, and it probably felt so wrong at first. Like you kind of have to
Actually,
like
no, it felt really nice. I'm
really,
like, I can't handle it. I can't handle that old stuff. It was too
yeah,
much. It felt nice to escape to something that was chill, right? Just music from the 30s, 40s. Really, yeah, it felt so good. So yeah, that was really easy to get into that. I was okay with that. But it was interesting how I'm fucking. And at first, I was like, it's because I'm going through a recovery journey. This is not going to be forever. Once I recover, I'll get back into the metal thing. But I didn't. After I'm recovered, I'm like, you know what? I like this stuff.
yeah.
Done with the whole metal thing. Sure, once in a while, memories, right? It's nice to rock out. My taste has changed authentically.
It makes me think like the deeper thing of like talk about brainwashing. I mean, you can get into like frequency stuff and the lyrics that are in songs and the tones. I mean, it's a very real thing that you have major minor chords that elicit different feelings. We can hear a
Ah,
chord and have that. I mean, it's no different than Googling symptoms, I think, like negative stuff on Google and reading it through the eyes versus hearing music that
right.
is like darker negative. I mean, it's kind of could be the same thing in terms of what
Aggressive, fight or
conditioning.
flight, fight.
Yes. Yeah, and I will notice that. And I mean, there's studies. I mean, this is so, I think, critical because people that are new to to them, I think this type of conversation almost sounds woo woo because it's like, no, it's just music. Just enjoy it. You can listen to whatever, but it really is not. And there's studies all over the place that like I remember a study that I learned back in school. Drivers listening to like metal music or this type of stuff drove faster than people driving. Okay, that's a physiological response. That's a
Right.
nervous system response happening due to stimulus. And
Then you
so
also hear people that metal for them is like therapy,
yeah,
and it calms them down. So I guess it all depends. I haven't figured that out yet either. I was kind of like, I see things, I see patterns, but for me, uh, I'm done with it. I'll listen to the reggae. I'll listen to the '70s groove. Sure, I like that, or the 1930s music. Oh man, so calming.
man, that's such a big one. I think that's where like I think a lot of people could start to is just like analyzing their consuming habits because I feel like that's a critical thing we're getting into now where you know before it was diet and McDonald's came out and it was convenient. And if you were a parent and you fed your kid McDonald's every single day, the other parents would be like, "Man, you're a great parent. That kid must love that. Like, that's awesome. Good for you. That
Yeah,
sounds like a good week." Now, if you were to say that, yeah, I fed my kid McDonald's every day, they'd be like, "Whoa, whoa, that's not right. You should not feed your
right,
kid McDonald's every day." But it took us decades to see the other side of what that consumption did. Because at first, the convenience and the taste and whatever was just so overwhelming that it only felt positive. And it
right,
wasn't until the after effects started and they would linger that we really like. And I feel like now that's where we're at with media. There was just this big influx of how we can consume things, and we put stuff in headphones and it's immediately hitting our minds, and we're listening to music that's Spotify is recommending that it's top 40, and it might be rap or whatever, and it could be something that's really actually not right for you where you're at right now. If your allostatic load is at its max,
yeah,
and you think that it's just convenient and it's fun and it's just you get a little dopamine hit just like the McDonald's. And I think
right. Or
now we're gonna
TikTok.
start, yeah, and the TikTok stuff. And it's like, man, I just think you have mentioned, we'll have to talk again another time, but like because there's so much here. The OCD stuff about this is always such a parallel. Like you read
Yeah,
Sarno's, and there's so many things of people dealing with these issues, tending to be perfectionists, tending to be XYZ. It's almost like we all have a similar personality trait, and the OCD aspect of it gets overlooked. I never thought I had OCD, but I totally had these OCD tendencies. And to imagine what scrolling and moving your conscious attention to something completely different every 2 seconds that's stimulating you, and you're watching a video of a fight break out, and then you're watching a video of the news and it's a
right.
bombing or whatever, and then you're watching a thing and it's positive and it's a little kitten and like laughing or whatever. You are running your mind and your consciousness through the gauntlet, and that has
Oh
to be
man,
stressful. And man, if you have thoughts and you can't control them, I mean, you're almost training that to get worse doing
yes,
that.
big time.
And I just think that's such a big thing. Like if people are having symptoms, I think you gotta, if you're
Look,
committed, you gotta cut. You just gotta. Maybe you can come back to it another time, but I would recommend cutting off the social stuff and just.
I did. I took a break from Facebook for 2 years, and I kept Instagram and YouTube, but I changed the algorithms to like recipes and travel. That's it. Nothing else.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you for chatting.
Thanks for having me.
I'm always surprised at the people that reach out to me, and I know you have a lot of people reaching out to you. I think it's cool that you're returning the favor and you're helping people, since you've done so much yourself. So I just really respect you for that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Also, with you getting into spreading some awareness to the mind body approaches and sharing your story. I think it's going to help a lot of people. So, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. If anybody's interested in getting coaching and stuff, where can they look that up? Where can they find you? And
Oh yeah, my I can send you my link to my YouTube channel. Just go to my YouTube and just watch my content, and then whatever topic I'm sure I cover it. Uh, it's a mindful gardener on YouTube.
okay, awesome. Well, thanks again. Let
Awesome.
me. I'll end this recording, but stay on with me for a second.